Hi everyone, this is Jill from the North Woods. Hi, I'm sorry about that. I am still on call for work, so please hold on just 1 second. All right, sorry about that. I am on call for work today, so I have a lot of things going on. We are doing a big IT thing. And so today I weighed in and I lost 2.6 pounds, which, if you subtract out the 2.1 pounds, that was already part of my gain last week. It was a pretty good week, so that's pretty good, and that's the lowest I've been for sure. So right now I am still losing weight, and I went to my doctor on yesterday, and like I said, I like my doctor. He's a good guy, and I get a big kick out of him. And the doctor is sorry, I keep checking work. So the doctor is really good, and he walked in and said, "Jill, you look great. This is amazing." And he let me know that according to clinical trials, at 20 pounds ago, I would have been at the clinical significance, like the amount of weight most people lost on this clinical trial. And he just said it was very good. I brought him a booklet because, like I said, he's sort of really into public health, and he wants to see data. And so I wrote him up a little report, and that report showed him how I was doing with muscle gain, weight loss, bone density. I showed him the DEXA scan and did all of the things that, I think he would have been interested in. I gave him a list of side effects I felt, how long each dose lasted, and just a general impression of weird things that changed here and there. So he was really interested. He thought it was great. And, like I said, this was my year. So this was a year ago that I saw him last, when he did a bunch of blood labs to make sure I was okay to take this drug. And he was just impressed. And I was so happy. And the one point that he was trying to make with me is that I should be happy with the amount of weight I've lost. So, like I said, this sort of brings it pretty close to, if it's at 166, I'm pretty close to, like, let's just call it a 68-pound weight loss. And he was concerned that I wasn't happy with the 68-pound weight loss, or that if I had a particular weight in mind, like 125, that I would be unhappy if I didn't get to that weight. And that, he didn't want me setting a weight or an ideal, because I could become very unhappy with that. Now, I told him, and I showed him the DEXA scan and said, this is really what I was relying on. The DEXA scan guy, who's not a doctor, suggested that at 138, I will have the right amount of visceral fat. He suggested that that 125 would put me at the right body fat percentage, and that's good. I appreciate that too. And so I was sort of putting my weight somewhere between 125 and 138. And, the doctor was just like, "I want you to celebrate how far you've come. Right now, every single one of your stats is good. And that's the most important piece. That's the most important thing, that your stats are good and that you are healthy. You are healthy right now." And he had concerns, I think, about going up in dose, because he wanted me to stay here for a while, maybe, and I understand that. I understand where he was coming from on that, is that if I stayed here for a little while, he said, the most important thing you can do right now is to retain this. People gain weight when they lose weight. It comes back. Maybe the habits fall apart. This drug helps, and when it stops helping, maybe I would start putting on weight again. Many people have, and that is a very common thing. And he said the most important thing for me to do is to just stay at this weight and try to maintain it, because if I do that, I will be healthy. And I thought it's a very fair point, that right now I am healthy with this. But in my mind, there's a couple of things that I have with this, is that, first of all, I want to be healthier, so I think that at 31% body fat or whatever, that's the range, right? It's supposed to be 21 to 31. I wasn't even going to go down to the lowest range. And I was going to stay, somewhere around the higher range. I was going to do that. But, the other part of it is that I'm a hiker. I go out in nature. And if I lost the ability to walk because I just had 40 pounds too much, that would make me pretty sad. So I basically, didn't want to stop. That's the point. So I thought it was really interesting, and it gave me a lot of food for thought that, maybe if I just stop and I keep this weight off right now, maybe that would be the best way to go. Maybe that would be the best idea for me to just stay here, maintain the weight, learn how to maintain this weight, and try that. And I appreciate that about him. I think that was a nice thought, that I think he has my best interests at heart. But like I said, I worry about my joints. I know I've already put my joints, my knees and my ankles through being very overweight and putting a lot of pressure on them. And so if I can stop putting as much pressure on them by losing more weight, I want to do that. And then the other part of it is that, like I said, I'm still 40 pounds overweight. So what we talked about is that he would increase the dose to 12.5. I still have 2. I took 1, and now I have 1 for next week of the lower dose, and then I will go and pick up the box with the higher dose. As you probably know, and you probably heard, the higher in dose you go up, the higher the side effects go. The higher the risk of getting some kind of a problem, whether it's pancreatitis or gallstone problems. The higher the dose, the bigger the problems. And so I think, too, he's looking out for me on that way. And he offered, too, that, there's other ways of losing weight. There's other drugs out there that help you lose weight, and he could help me with that. And I said, well, I kind of made a deal. I said, let's go to the next dose. I'm losing about 24 pounds per dose. Let's go to that next dose. That will put me somewhere around 140, which puts me a couple of pounds away from the magic 138, where I won't have as much visceral fat, and puts me within 15 pounds of the 125, which in my head is what I think is a pretty reasonable goal weight. And he agreed with that. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go on the higher dose. He's going to... we're going to have a video telehealth thing in 3 months, see how we're doing. Now, here's an interesting thing about it is, like, first of all, this had my brain just chewing away because I am so worried that insurance or something like that is going to kick me off of this drug. And for him to say, "What? Maybe you should be happy about this. Maybe this is good enough, and maybe you should just celebrate this, what you've already had. You have already lost 68 pounds, and that's amazing, and you are healthy, and that's a reason to celebrate." Boy, that's been chewing up in my brain for the last 24, 36 hours or so, just thinking about that it's huge. And I think, too, that he was kind of worried, what if you don't lose more weight? What if we go up in dose and you don't lose more weight? Now, I'm not really particularly worried about that. This has been a solid, reliable thing for me. The thing that Mounjaro has been for me is I almost reliably lose about 1.4 pounds a week. And so I'm not really worried that there's going to be this case where it stops working at this point. Now, here's an interesting thing to keep in mind is that there's a person who does another YouTube channel, and she is a firm believer that at 60 weeks, this drug stops working because I think it stopped working for her. And it stopped working for her when she still had weight to lose. But I also think, and I'm not sure, I'm not her doctor and I don't know her from Adam, but I think she went very quickly up in dose. And as soon as you tap out on each dose, it becomes harder to lose weight. And so I think she wanted big effects fast. And so she raced up the dose ladder. And then when that top dose stopped working for her, she had room left to go. I've been going very slowly. I have 2 doses left to go, 40 pounds to lose it. I am going to be well in that range. And so I'm not really particularly worried about it. I think I will finish that. So I am going to go to 12.5. I am going to try to lose. And like I said, meet with him in 3 months, which is not nearly enough time because I think the dose would last me about 6 months if it's a lot like the 10.0. well, maybe 4 months, but I think that we'll know better and then we can see. But then comes the question, and we talked a little bit about this, is I said, I get that everyone knows how to get you on this drug and everyone knows how to help you lose weight on this drug. But the question is, we don't know yet how to get you off of this drug, right? We don't know how people get off of this drug and succeed without putting on the weight. And that, I think, is going to be a big thing for insurance companies to think about, because this is great. If you lose a bunch of weight, you never get diabetic, you never need knee replacements and hip replacements and all the things that go along with being overweight, they've saved money. It's a big win for them. But if they spend $12,000 or $20,000 to put you on this drug, and then you just gain it right back again and you're diabetic, you have knee replacements, hip replacements, and all the health things, it wasn't worthwhile for them, the insurance company. And they are a business too, just like anything else. And then, on the hospital side of things, if doctors, got you to lose weight for a short period of time and then you put it back on again, you're in worse shape. You are in worse shape because you have lost weight, and when you gain it back, it will come all back as fat. And so you will be technically less healthy if you were to gain all the weight back again than you were when you started this out. So we really need to find out. So I shared with him the study that I liked that talked about whenever you're ready to go off of it, you titrate down to whatever half the dose is, and then you stay at that for a year, and then you titrate off entirely. That seemed to have good results. I don't know of any follow-ups with that, and I don't, I would love to know if that's true, but the initial results were that it had some goodness to it. And again, early next year, Eli Lilly will probably come out with their pill, which is interesting because it will be cheaper. It won't be a shot. And right now, Mounjaro, I think, helps you to lose like 20 to 28% of your body fat, right, as part of the clinical trials. This drug is more like 7%. And I think that some people will say, well, that's not fast enough. So I think there's always going to be an interest in going on these shots to lose a big amount of weight. But the pill, for the people who are on maintenance, for the people who have a very small piece of weight to lose, they're going to be the ones who might be enticed by this pill. It'll be cheaper, and it'll be something that people could afford to pay out of pocket if they decided to do that. So I think, I have options for me, and I'm not too terribly worried about it at this point. But, I think for me, like I said, I've been overweight since I've been, 8 years old. And to stop with 40 pounds to go, or maybe even stop with 15 pounds to go, I think will feel kind of bad to me. Like I didn't finish the goal. I didn't finish this. But, in thinking about it in the last 36 hours, I thought the important thing is that I'm healthy. That's one thing. He's right about that. The other important thing is, and this is the most important thing, is that we keep the weight off. We exercise, which I'm doing, and he was happy about that. We do, strength training to keep the muscles going. Walking is great. Cardio is great, but it's not about weight loss, and it's not producing little factories that burn the sugar inside of you. And so it's not as important. I'll say it right there. I don't think cardio is as important as weight and resistance training. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the coming weeks. I just couldn't do it today because of work. But the idea is, that's the most important thing. If we just keep yo-yoing up and down all the time, gaining weight and losing weight and gaining weight and losing weight, and we're not going to be healthier in the end with this. The most important thing, and he said it right to me, is that you keep this weight off as best you can. Now, we talked about other episodes, and I'm not going to talk about it too much again, but the body remembers past weights. I get stuck at 186 every time I lose weight because the body says, ooh, I was here for 8 years. I know how to keep Jill healthy with that. And I get that. The body remembers that this is a good math place for Jill. Jill lives when she's 186, but it doesn't understand Jill doesn't live well, right? The body knows how to keep your temperature right, how to keep your metabolism right. It understands 186, and it's going to be that way all along. And so it is going to fight for a while to go back up. It thinks, oh my gosh, my whole job, I know I'm anthropomorphizing the body, was to keep Jill flourishing, and now she's gone and lost a bunch of weight. What can I do to get her weight back up so we can go back to the happy place where I knew how to keep her alive? And unfortunately, it takes time before the body says, okay, Jill at 125, got it. She's good. She's healthy. Everything's great. So you have to stay there for a while, or stay in that range for a while, so that you don't so you don't go rebound back into your other weight. And like I said, every time you do that, unhealthier. You get unhealthier. And so he's right. The most important thing for me right now is to stay at a weight I'm healthy at, which is right now. And I'm going to lose more. And I'm still hoping that I'm going to, like I said, try the one dose. It'll probably put me 15 pounds out. Right now, I am still losing weight, even though this dose is not working for me. My digestion returned to normal. The ADHD came roaring back. Boy, that has been, I should do a whole podcast about that. That's been a trip. It's like before I could focus, and now it's gone. But I learned a lot of lessons during the year where I could really focus. And so it taught me some things about myself, and we'll talk about that in another episode. But he's right. The most important thing is keeping the weight off. And if you get too thin, and my friends have told me that, who have not had excessive weight problems, it is harder to keep a skinnier weight off permanently than it is to keep a moderate weight off. And I understand that to be true. So like I said, we're going to go one more round, and then in 3 months, we're going to see where that lands. I'll call him. We'll have a telehealth visit, and we'll talk about where to go from here. But I like him. Like I said, I like the fact that he's thinking about my best interest. He said that, and it's not a bad thing, but he said that, when you have a drug or medication, many times a lot of entities out there want to keep you on it as long as possible. That option is a possibility, he told me. I'm technically type 2 diabetic. I could play that card probably for the rest of my life, but do I want to do that? And I think the answer for me right now is no, I would love to come off of this drug or go on to the pill at some point. So there you have it. The one last interesting thing about this doctor visit is that I was supposed to do blood labs, and he was going to do glucose, cholesterol, all the standard panels. And he was going to also add B12 in there. Gallbladder, from what I understand, shows up in a B12 blood test. I don't know if that's why he's doing it, but people do on this drug have gallbladder problems as any weight loss. Anytime you have too much weight, or anytime you lose a lot of weight, the gallbladder could start having trouble. So I get that. And then I told him I was taking creatine, which is it helps build muscle. Women don't make it very well, but it helps brain activity as well. And so it's just a generally good thing. You throw it into a glass of liquid, and you drink a dose down, and it just helps you in a number of ways. And he said, well, I was going to do a kidney test on you, and I need you to be off of creatinine for 3 days and drink lots of water and flood it out of your system before you come back and take a blood lab. So I didn't get my blood labs done yet. We'll find out that soon. I think I'm going to go back in on Friday and take those labs. But the idea is that it can affect a kidney test. So that's a good thing to know, that when you are taking vitamins, you may run into trouble with blood labs. So make sure you tell your doctor exactly what vitamins you're taking. Now, I never took vitamins before, and he was pretty happy with me just taking a multivitamin and D. And I told him, I said, yeah, I kind of started taking K2, which is good for your heart. I started taking magnesium because it helps me sleep. And I've been taking omega-3 because I don't like fish. And so that's places where you get omega-3 I don't tend to eat. And he goes, gosh, I really wish that you would eat those things. Spinach, vegetables. You can get enough calcium out of yogurt or cottage cheese. So he said, I'd kind of be happier if you did some of these other things and you just ate those things. So another good piece of advice for sure. I said, I kind of worried with this diet that I wasn't eating enough in general. because my calories are low and they're almost all going towards protein and fiber, that I thought, well, let's just take some vitamins right now while I'm having this very low diet. And then eventually when I get off of this, I will look to increase my eating in more nutritious ways. So anyway, it was a great experiment. It gave me a lot of food for thought, but I wanted to relay that message to you. Find a way to keep this weight off. That is really the most important thing that you can do right now, the most important work. And that includes weight training, a little bit of cardio, that includes eating well. I'm using this particular Monjero experiment as training wheels. When you don't have food cravings and you don't have your ADHD impulse issues, it is helpful to you, to get off of this and to realize, oh, you know what? I am very addicted to this or that. And so while this drug isn't working, I'm not doing those things now because I know it was too much of an addiction to me. Diet Coke, salt, various kinds of food out there. I've been very careful while this drug is not working for me to stay away from things that got me in the hole the last time. And so learning a little bit about yourself while being on this drug, I think, is one of the most valuable things we can do. All right, everyone, appreciate it. I don't know if anyone is out there. This was kind of, like I said, a late night for me just because of work. But if anyone has any questions or comments, you can always put them in the chat. I always respond to everybody. I appreciate you being out there. And if you have a comment now, you can put it in the chat. I can see them right here. But I'll give it just a minute. And all right. Well, we got a quiet group tonight. That's fine. Like I said, this was a little bit different time than normal. Appreciate you being out there. You can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Thanks so much. Have a great night.